there. I thought I'd come on because I wanted to read a book to all of you. You don't need to be in year 6 to enjoy this book. I've chosen a book that I really enjoyed when I was a child. It is what they call a timeless classic. It is Charlotte's Web. It was first published in 1952. So it's quite an old book, but like I said, it's a timeless classic. So that means that we can still enjoy it now. And I know a lot of people still enjoy the story. Anyway, I thought I'd read a short chapter each day. Some days I might upload 2 chapters, some days I might just upload 1 chapter, but I thought you can follow along with me the story of Charlotte's Web. If you've read it already, then you can just kind of enjoy it again, or if you have never read the story, then you can enjoy it for the first time. Enjoy! So, chapter 1, Before Breakfast. "Where's Papa going with the axe?" said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for the breakfast. "Out to the hog house," replied Mrs. Arable. "Some pigs were born last night." "I don't see why he needs an axe," continued Fern, who was only 8. "Well," said her mother, "one of the pigs is a runt. It's very small and weak, and it will never amount to anything, so your father has decided to do away with it." "Do away with it?" shrieked Fern. "You mean kill it, just because it's smaller than the others?" Mrs. Arable put a pitcher of cream in the table. "Don't yell, Fern," she said. "Your father is right, the pig would probably die anyway." Fern pushed a chair out of the way and ran outdoors. The grass was wet and the earth smelled of springtime. Fern's sneakers were sopping by the time she caught up with her father. "Please don't kill it," she sobbed. "It's unfair." Mr. Arable stopped walking. "Fern," he said gently, "you have to learn to control yourself." "Control myself?" yelled Fern. "This is a matter of life and death, and you talk about controlling myself." Tears ran down her cheeks, and she took hold of the axe and tried to pull it out of her father's hand. "Fern," said Mr. Arable, "I know more about raising a litter of pigs than you do. A weakling makes trouble. Now, run along." "But it's unfair," cried Fern. "The pig couldn't help being small, could it?" "If I had been very small at birth, would you have killed me?" Mr. Arable smiled. "Certainly not," he said, looking down at his daughter with love. There's a picture there of Fern trying to grab the axe off her father. "Certainly not," he said, looking down at his daughter with love. "But this is different. A little girl is one thing, a little runty pig is another." "I see no difference," replied Fern, still hanging on to the axe. "This is the most terrible case of injustice I have ever heard of." A queer look came over John Arable's face. He seemed almost ready to cry himself. "All right," he said. "You go back into the house and I'll bring up the runt when I come in. I'll let you raise it on a bottle, like a baby. Then you'll see what trouble a pig can be." When Mr. Arable returned to the house half an hour later, he carried a carton under his arm. Fern was upstairs changing her sneakers. The kitchen table was set for breakfast, and the room smelt of coffee, bacon, damp plaster, and wood smoke from the stove. "Put it on her chair," said Mrs. Arable. Mr. Arable set the carton down at Fern's place. Then he walked to the sink and washed his hands and dried them on the roller towel. Fern came slowly down the stairs. Her eyes were red for crying. As she approached her chair, the carton wobbled, and there was a scratching noise. Fern looked at her father. Then she lifted the lid of the carton. There, inside, looking up at her, was the new-born pig. It was a white one. The morning light shone through its ears, turning them pink. "He's yours," said Mr. Arable, "saved from an untimely death, and may the good Lord forgive me for this foolishness." Fern couldn't take her eyes off the tiny pig. "Oh," she whispered, "oh, look at him. He's absolutely perfect." She closed the carton carefully. First she kissed her father, then she kissed her mother. Then she opened the lid again, lifted the pig out and held it against her cheek. At this moment her brother Avery came into the room. Avery was 10. He was heavily armed an air rifle in one hand, a wooden dagger in the other. "What's that?" he demanded. "What's Fern got?" "She's got a guest for breakfast," said Mrs. Arable. "Wash your hands and your face, Avery." "Let's see it," said Avery, setting his gun down. "You call that miserable thing a pig? That's a fine specimen of a pig. It's no bigger than a white rat." "Wash up and eat your breakfast, Avery," said his mother. "The school bus will be along in half an hour." "Can I have a pig too?" asked Avery. "No, I only distribute pigs to early risers," said Mr. Arable. Fern was up at daylight trying to rid the world of injustice. As a result, she now has a pig. A small one, to be sure, but nevertheless a pig. It just shows what can happen if a person gets out of bed properly. "Let's eat." But Fern couldn't eat until her pig had had a drink of milk. Mrs. Arable found a baby's nursing bottle. She poured warm milk into the bottle and handed it to Fern. "Give him his breakfast," she said. A minute later, Fern was seated on the floor of the corner of the kitchen with her infant between her knees, teaching it to suck from the bottle. The pig, although tiny, had a good appetite and caught on quickly. The school bus honked from the road. "Run!" commanded Mrs. Arable, taking the pig from Fern and slipping a doughnut into her hand. Avery grabbed his gun and another doughnut. The children ran out to the road and climbed into the bus. Fern took no notice of the others in the bus. She just sat and stared out of the window, thinking what a blissful world it was, and how lucky she was to have entire charge of a pig. By the time the bus reached the school, Fern had named her pet, selecting the most beautiful name she could think of. "Its name is Wilbur," she whispered to herself. She was still thinking about the pig when her teacher said, "Fern, what is the capital of Pennsylvania?" "Wilbur," replied Fern, dreamily. The pupils giggled, and Fern blushed. There was a picture here that I missed that you can see of Fern nursing the pig while she should have been having her breakfast. There you go. So that is chapter 1. Chapter 2 is called Wilbur. I will do that in the next video. I hope you've enjoyed that. Maybe you want to have a think, if you've not read the story, why you think it might be called Charlotte's Web, because the girl isn't called Charlotte. Who do you think Charlotte might be? You can have a look at the front cover, see if you think you can pick up any clues from that. I hope you've enjoyed the first chapter, and I hope you're back for a second chapter. Take care and stay safe. Bye.